Welcome to your real estate podcast. My name is Raymond. I am a realtor in the state of Maryland and the District of Columbia, licensed with RE/MAX. And today we're going to talk to the home buyers, prospective buyers for 2026, right? So whether you're looking to buy in DC or Maryland, this pertains to you, but also outside of DC and Maryland. These steps are pretty, I would say, national. Wouldn't say universal, but we're going to discuss certain things. So stay tuned. This is the ultimate home buyer's guide if you're looking to buy a home this year. Right now, the interest rates hover around 6.11 to 6.26, which is slightly up from previous days. That's a 30-year fixed mortgage. The 15-year fixed mortgage rate is approximately 5.50 to 5.625. Rates have remained relatively stable, though some forecasts suggest potential drops due to economic reports, right? We know the president is trying to get the interest rates lower, trying to stimulate things, shake up the feds. Some people are against that. We're just going to talk numbers, right? So buying a home in 2026 requires focusing on total monthly affordability, right? You think about taxes, insurance, HOA fees, if you live in an HOA community, right? Rather than just price. As rates stabilize now, key 2026 strategies include securing mortgage pre-approval early. So now it's winter time. As a buyer, this is when you might want to start looking at pre-approvals, right? Because those are normally good for 4 months. So if you're thinking about buying in the spring, it's a good time to get your pre-approval. This might be a good time because the market is not as flooded with buyers, so you might get a deal. The market has kind of slowed down a little bit, starting to pick back up compared to last year. But when you think about pandemic and early post-pandemic, the market was booming and it was a seller's market. Right now, buyers kind of got some leverage, but it may tilt back towards the sellers, especially if the interest rate drops and we get more buyers in the market. You know, supply and demand. So the more buyers we get, the more sellers feel like they can charge you an arm and a leg, right? So right now, when things are still kind of favoring our buyers, maybe a good time, even though it's cold, but you don't have that many buyers out there. So your offer may be stronger now than in a few months. Something to think about. So you want to focus on getting your securing your pre-approval early, focusing on a long-term 5 to 7 year sustainability. You're thinking about, can you maintain this lifestyle for at least 5 to 10 years? Exploring energy efficient homes is a good thing, and using the 3-3-3 rule. So 3 homes, 3 neighborhoods to reduce decision fatigue. You don't want to go. I've shown houses to people, showing them tons of houses. One buyer started at the start of 1 year, and it was almost the entire year we were looking, which is not advised by, a lot of realtors don't like that. I tend to lean more towards customer service, but sometimes you wonder, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? For buyers, even when you sell things in, let's say, a retail store, for instance, the more options you show a buyer, the more confused they sometimes be. So you want to kind of glean information from them as an agent, target what fits them, and then go there. You don't want to stare people and, push them away from things they want. But as a knowledgeable professional, you want to use the numbers and their preferences to find them the best options. So what I recommend normally to clients is we find 6 or 7 homes, hit it on a weekend or weekday, whatever works for you. You make a choice and we go from there. Because once you start touring houses, every house is going to have something you like, something you don't like. Some people say they found the perfect home, but there's always something about a house you're not going to like particularly. Maybe not even the house, maybe the neighbors, maybe the neighborhood. So there's always something that you may have to compromise a little bit on, or you can fix when you get in, right? So you don't want to be looking at too many houses. Sometimes I don't tell people to rush. As I mentioned, there's one buyer that I showed houses for almost an entire year, because it is a lifetime purchase sometimes. It's probably the biggest purchase somebody is going to make. So you want them to be satisfied with it because they use it every day. It's not like maybe a luxury watch that you may buy and only wear on special occasions. This is your house. You're going to go in there almost every day, sleep there, spend time with your family. And if there are things you don't like about it, you're going to be reminded by it every single day. So I normally recommend making sure you find what you really like, right? Especially now, we keep hearing inflation, economic downturn, potential recession. You don't know where things are going to go. However, what you want to do as a home buyer is get a home that may not require so much maintenance. New constructions might be a possibility, or fairly new or well renovated homes, right? 2026 home buyer trends and strategies. Affordability over price. So it just is what it is. There was once upon a time when some people still do it, try to keep up with the Joneses. The more money you make, the more you try to elevate your standard of living. So you were okay driving that Toyota Corolla, Honda Civic. Now you make a few more dollars. You want to go get a BMW, a Benz. You probably were living in a not so decent house, but it served the need. Now you got an increase at your job and you want to buy a bigger house. So people always try to elevate their standard of living, but now buyers are tending to lean more towards affordability because it's just the reality of it. Focus on the total monthly payment, including insurance, taxes, which are rising faster than income. Especially, I live in the state of Maryland right now. There's a lot of, if you earn this much, you got to pay. Maryland is leaning a little bit more towards the California tax thing, which may help people in low income. But if you are making a decent amount of money, you got to keep that in mind. Your property taxes also, as houses in the area appreciate, your property tax is going to appreciate with it, right? So what your mortgage may be this year may be different next year, not because your mortgage is not stable. It's because the taxes have gone up. So something to think about. Long-term mindset. Choose a home suitable for at least 5 to 7 years to ride out market volatility. And honestly, that's what I did when I purchased my first home. You ain't got to be like me, but I bought a house that I feel as though I can afford comfortably. Honestly speaking, I show houses to buyers all the time, and you get to see their income and what they qualify for. And some of these buyers barely qualify for things, but they want the best, So hands down, on a personal note, I think I could afford a much bigger house than I currently live in. But it's like, okay, I'm gonna buy this and ride it out for 5 to 7 years and, use the money to start other, just things, and just get myself in a comfortable position. So if I want to upgrade, I can upgrade, or maybe try make this a rental property, build your real estate portfolio. It's just, if you go through a financial downturn personally, you don't want to have to go into foreclosure, do a short sale, try to get rid of your house because you're spending every single dime on mortgage and bills. So get a house that, you can afford with a few extra dollars to maintain your standard of living and just in case of emergencies, right? Maintenance or just medical, you never know, right? So I don't believe in living paycheck to paycheck and spending every single dime. If I, once upon a time, we all go through those things when you're young, you got an apartment, probably in school, you probably go through those things, right? But as you become an adult, it's like, my advice to home buyers is buy something that you can be comfortable with financially. You know, you don't want to be pinching pennies to pay your mortgage. Not a good strategy, especially in how volatile the market is. And we live in an area right here that is kind of dependent upon the federal government, right? The D.C. and Maryland area, the Washington metropolitan, which also encompasses Virginia, Northern Virginia. Most jobs rely on the federal government, and we saw all the federal government job cuts. So you don't know, and this is just for this area, but other areas are going through things as well. So things are kind of unstable, not unsure. You hear possible switching of the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, so you never know where things are going to go. With the new person, the new policies. So we're kind of like in a volatile situation right now as an economy, a nation. So if you can afford a house right now, get it, but don't spend your last dime and don't get a house where all your money goes towards bills. Long-term mindset, choose a home suitable. We already talked about that, but once again, 5 to 7 years, that's medium, right? Not even long term, because you can always refinance if the interest rates go lower, your home appreciates, you can sell this house and buy something better, put yourself in a position to where you can grow your real estate portfolio if you so choose to do so. It all depends also on age. If you're older and you want to just downsize, that's cool. You sell your home, get a one-level ranch or townhouse, condo. Or if you're a first-time home buyer, just get your foot in the real estate door and then work your way from there. But if you're already an established adult, you've already owned a home, your family's starting to grow, and now you just need more space, then you can then, lock your finances together and then go after your dream home. So it really depends on what stage of life you're in. Some people, it makes sense to go for that $1 million home because they've already owned multiple houses before, and or they may have an apartment, they just got married, kids, things are growing, they need a bigger home, so they just close their eyes and get that home. I'm working with a family now looking for land. They're already homeowners. They're looking for land. Husband is retired. Wife is close to retirement. And they want to build their retirement home. They're looking for acres upon acres of land, So it depends on the stage that you may be in. But for first-time home buyers, I would recommend thinking about 5 to 7 years. If I don't get a raise, if I don't get a promotion, if I only keep this job, and taxes go up, inflation, can I maintain this way of living? All right. So the 333 rule, narrow your searches to 3 serious homes, 3 desired neighborhood to reduce stress. We talked about that. Mortgage readiness, right? The pre-approval, shop different lenders. I work with one lender primarily, but I have backup lenders. And sometimes my main lender wasn't able to come through, called a backup lender, they came through. So that's something to think about. Also, I always recommend to my buyers, they come with their lenders sometimes. I tell them, hey, that's cool, you can try these 3. Just make sure you apply within 10 days because it's not going to hit your credit score 3 times. It'll be like one search. If you go do 3 pre-approvals, some say 10, some say 14. I'm on the safe side. I say try to complete these 3 applications within 10 days. So you kind of get just that one ding on your credit score and you see what lender offers you the best rates. This is business, right? You're not trying to just go with the first lender that comes your way. A point 0.5 differential in an interest rate offer, from a lender can turn up to thousands of dollars, in a 30-year span. So think about that. Targeted efficiency, Energy Star. Some people care about that, but especially this winter. This winter's been very brutal. And if your windows are not like brand new, you get a lot of cold air coming in. You just got to spend more to heat your house up, right? So think about things like that. If you're buying an older home, look, did they replace the windows? Rising cost. Prepare for higher closing costs to ensure you have emergency funds for maintenance and not just down payment. I was told when I bought my house, have at least $5,000 left over, which I didn't, because at the time I also made, it's like things come in threes. I made a big purchase. I did something big as well on the family side, and it was just big expenditures back to back to back, and I was almost cash strapped. Thankfully, I bought a house that I could afford and I have extra money. But if I had gotten the house I really qualified for, the highest dollar I qualified for, God knows what would have happened, because all those expenditures, and you spend everything, and now you're pinching pennies. So I always recommend buy a house and make sure you have at least 5,000 extra. If you're buying a new construction, then possibly the warranty should take care of things, but sometimes these things delay. You may need to repair it and then get reimbursed or whatever, which you don't necessarily have to do, but there are nightmare stories with new constructions. They're all over the news and social media. You can look into them. So still have extra money, or you still may need to furnish the house. Or you may spend all of that and then you got to pay your mortgage. Just keep a little something on the side, right? Rainy day funds, right? If you're buying an older house, you never know. Things may look good. You get in, you got to change the roof. Always do a home inspection, by the way. But you may still buy the house, things look good, the inspector passed it, and then you run into the refrigerator pops. The water line pops in something. Your washer, dryer goes bad, I just had to replace a dryer, and I've been in my house now for at least 4 years, but I never liked that dryer anyway, but that's what was in the house. I kind of always wanted to replace it, and then, was it the dryer or the washer that went bad? It might have been the washer, but it was one of those single units where they're attached. And the bad side about that, once one goes bad, you got to replace both. So I bought 2 separate units now, and it's just something to think about. At least it lasted 4 years. But as soon as I got in, maybe a year in or so, I had to change the water heater. These are just things to think about. The water heater, you got to change. And then thankfully, everything else has worked. But I've done repairs that I wanted to do. But the water heater was like, you have to. And also, I had to do like septic work, These are things I didn't see coming, So I try to advise buyers, you never know what's going to pop up. When the septic tank goes bad, if you got a family, you need your septic working, right? Some people are in areas that with public sewage. I'm a little further out, and I prefer where I'm at because of the land space, get a lot of land. But when you live so far out, sometimes you get the land, but you don't get connection to all the public facilities. So you need a septic system, and then boom, that goes bad. You got to get that fixed. It's not something you could live without. The water heater went bad. Got to get that fixed. Not something you could live without, So those were the 2 emergency fixes that I needed in my house. But some people I've heard, some of my clients bought a house, did an inspection. The inspector said the roof It's not in the best shape. Turned out the roof was leaking. First big storm, boom, it's leaking. You know, clients had to raise hell, and we had to pretty much put the press on the inspector, like, hey man, you passed this roof. You said it's not in the best shape, but you didn't say it was leaking. And now there's mold, there's all kind of things. Brand new, well renovated home, you know, but then this leak, and they got an elderly family member there, you know, and the water upstairs on the attic can cause mold. So it was not a good look, you know. So those are all things to worry about when you even do the inspection. The inspector, make sure you get somebody really good. This was a very good company. I did a lot of business with them, but something just was trending in the negative for the past two. There was one guy when I first started dealing with them. He was very detailed because the seller I was dealing with wanted the inspector there. I mean, an agent there, so I had to be there. I sat in my car, just watch him do his thing from a distance because I didn't want to influence his opinion. And very detailed, very thorough. And I'm like, good, I'll keep working with this company. But then red flags started popping up. Maybe that guy got booked so much, they sent me the B team or the C team from that company. And it was just like, what's going on here, you know? And whoever they sent wasn't diligent enough as the first inspector. And they did point out the old roof, but they didn't say it was leaking, you know? So now what I did, I'm under contract now, and I got an inspector for my buyer, and they pointed out the roof is not in the greatest of conditions. What I did was I got a roofing company out there. Do your due diligence, you know? That's why also we're going to get into selecting an agent. These are things that I've gone through over the years of being a realtor, selling dozens of homes every year. You just, on average, you know what to look for. So when I first started, you run into these things and you get lucky and, you know, nothing major happens. Then, like I said, I trusted this company because we had done some business, but something was just telling me the service, whoever they sending out there, because one time my buyer wanted to be there. I wasn't able to be there. The buyer said, I want to be there with the inspector. I asked the seller's permission. They're like, fine. So the buyer was there. Buyer waited almost an hour before the inspector showed up. That was the first red flag. You know, just not being timely. And my buyer was always blowing my phone up like, hey, I'm still here. This person is not here. And I had to call the company so many times. And then the inspector finally showed up, and buyer didn't like that house for one reason or another. They ended up getting another house, and the same inspector did that thing. But I wouldn't say it's a company because I sat down through multiple of the inspections before, and a certain gentleman that I ran into was very diligent. But as the company, I don't know if they got busy or something, that particular person wasn't the one that was sent out. So that's the thing as well, right? Some of these companies may be very good, even agents, you know, you get the brand name, but then you got bad apples. So do your research as a home buyer for the agent himself or herself. Even though it may sound good, you know, Remax, Keller Williams, whatever company you want to bring up, Long and Foster, whatever brand name, whatever team you hear about that's doing a hell of a job in your area, selling a bunch of houses. Do some research on the personality of the agent, you know, even the inspector. Even if they give you a little red light, red flag, probe into it a little bit more, you know. So like I mentioned, the house that I got under contract now, it's in Waldorf, Maryland. Inspector, you know, different inspection company now. I got 3 that I normally work with because of pricing sometimes, and also just the detail of the work they do. So he pointed out that the roof seems little at the end of its life, similar to that. And I've had that years ago, and that was a red flag. You know what? Let's get a roofing company out there, see what the damage is and what's the cost to possibly fix it. The roofing company went out there and said, I can certify this roof for 1 year. My buyer's like, okay, I can live with that. I don't mind because I plan on getting things repaired anyway. They got a house at a really good deal, and they knew it looked very good for the price and location, but certain things are not all the way up to par, and the seller is not in a position to help financially, right? So the buyer knew they may have to spend some money. Okay, I can get this repaired. As long as it's going to last this long, fine. But just know what you're getting into. Double inspect, right? If they say that the roof is not working and they recommend getting something fixed, send somebody there. If they say plumbing seems shaky, I would recommend getting a certified plumber. Do that. Spend the extra money. If they say the electrical looks a little funny, I would recommend getting a certified electrician. Go the extra mile and spend that money, because it may cost you a few $100s, but it will save you thousands on the back end, right? But also another thing is just leverage a new construction if you possibly can. Save you from all those repair and maintenance costs. But one thing you need to be very mindful of, you got some nightmare builders out there where it's a nightmare, you know. Mortgage rates are stabilizing, not crashing right now, so that's a good thing. Good for the housing market. The inventory is improving, but competition has disappeared, right? So even though we're getting more properties being listed, a lot of them are also going expired because the buyers are not out there as much as they once were. So that might be a good time. You can negotiate a little tougher with sellers, because if a house has sat on the market for quite a while, the seller may be able to knock down the price. So keep that in mind. Buyers got a little bit more leverage now than they did in previous years. Negotiating power is back in some markets. You know, some markets are still hot. Even in Maryland, you can't, or DC, you can't paint a broad brush and say this entire area. There are many markets in the state of Maryland. So for instance, some cities, Annapolis, not all places in Annapolis, but you got to know the areas. Silver Spring, right? Bowie, Bethesda, Chevy Chase. You know, you go to DC, certain areas of DC as well. Houses don't sit, but then in other areas, houses may sit. So you want a local expert that can kind of get you there and let you know whether you need to jump on this and offer asking, or you got some leverage to negotiate. Obviously, you know, the pre-approval is non-negotiable because, one, it shows the seller you're serious, and two, it just puts you in a better position to negotiate. They're going to take you seriously. You know, home inspection, obviously. Credit score matters when you're buying a home. The better your credit score is, the lower the interest rates are going to be. So that's something to think about. You may want to get your credit score as high as possible. Here in the state of Maryland, for instance, for first-time home buyer programs, they consider your credit score, and those with higher credit scores tend to get a little bit better deals, even on the first-time home buyer programs. The MMP is what I'm referring to, the Maryland Mortgage Program, right? There is a threshold to get in. I think it's 640. And even with the FHA, some FHA lenders say they take 580, but that's actually hard to see. I would say 640 is a decent starting point, actually. 600 might work, but especially if your income is really high. But the higher, 640 is just a starting point. the higher your credit score, the lower your mortgage rate is going to be. That's going to save you thousands of dollars in the back end. Location flexibility can save you money. As I mentioned, I live in the suburbs. Longer drive, but just a bigger, more bang for my buck. Let's put it that way. You know, I could have stayed in a more populated area, but it's not that far off from cities and shopping centers all around. But if you want to stay in the thick of things in DC, you're not going to get a lot. You know, you get these little apartments, size condos that cost 4 or 5 times my house, you know, because you're in the thick of things. So something to think about. If that matters to you as far as proximity to things and jobs and the metro and things of that nature, that's fine. You also got to consider the parking cost and convenience, or if you don't mind driving, traffic, things of that nature, all things to worry about. Rent versus buy is a long-term decision again. Buying makes sense if you plan to stay for several years. Renting makes sense if you may be looking to relocate, right? Down payment options still exist, especially here in Maryland. And yeah, there are programs in Baltimore, Northern Virginia. Just check your local market wherever you may be. Down payment assistance, grants, assistance. You got these loan programs that are zero interest loans. They are loans that you got to pay back, especially if you sell the property. Keep that in mind. Just speak with the lender, get the details. Work with a local expert. Hyperlocal market knowledge can save you thousands. And I gave stories about that. Just because they say the market is crashing doesn't mean it's crashing everywhere. If you sell houses a lot in a certain area, you may know this area is still hot, even though the market as a whole is hot. Sometimes even when the market is hot, there are some areas where I look and nothing is sold there in about a year. You know, so you can tell this little pocket in this area is not selling for whatever reason. Just had a buyer from out of town, a medical student. I was working with him last year. Just sent me a bunch of text messages a day or yesterday even, trying to go buy a house in Baltimore. There's no staring or redlining, but I just pointed out, hey, are you familiar with the crime rate in this area? These houses look immaculate on the inside. You know, look almost like brand new, you know. But what I know is the city of Baltimore was offering people $1 to buy houses, you know. And a lot of those houses, I got a bunch of investors that I know over there that buy them and they renovate them. So the house, he sent me like 4 houses. 2 of them seem to be in a decent neighborhood, but as a medical school student from out of town, is he familiar with the crime rate in the area? You know, especially you send me one house and the whole block, that's the only house that's constructed. Every other house is boarded up. Yes, you might be getting into a gold mine. So you can buy very cheap and all the houses in, because I know one of the developers, he owns pretty much a whole block. He's building them one at a time and selling them. So over time, that may be a good deal for you. And I know one person who's looking to move into something like that. But I just wanted to say, hey, you're from out of town. These areas were kind of like high crime areas. People moved out and the government is now incentivizing buyers to buy them. Is that something you may be okay with? You know, it may not be high crime now. Do some more due diligence. As a realtor, you don't want to steer people away from things, but you just give them the information. So he's like, wow, I didn't know that. Thanks for letting me know. I'm going to drive by there and see if it's okay with me. I like the price. I like the renovation, and I'll get back to you. And I also told him, hey, I'll pull up some stats and things like that. But a couple of these you sent me look good. So local expert and even though I'm not local to Baltimore, I've sold multiple houses in that area. I've done business. Well, I've done business there. You know, I got investors that work there, so I'm familiar. You know, I'm pretty sure somebody that hasn't done business there wouldn't know. You know, I've done business there. I got investors that are flipping houses there. I got people that talk to me about the market there, and you know, you're just aware. So those are things you want to know as a buyer. Talk to an agent that knows the area, you know. So this, if I just want a commission check, hey, let's go put an offer for a great house. But you know, just looking at the house, it's the only finished house on that whole block. And for a student that's probably not going to be home all the time, what's the crime rate like, you know? I know people who got houses broken into while they were working a lot in certain areas, not only in Baltimore, but in other areas, you know, in different places. So I'm just saying, those are just things you may want to point out, you know, to your clients, and also like buyers may need to know. So when you work with somebody, just work with somebody that has your best interest in mind. That's not just chasing a commission. And once again, it's illegal to stare, so I can't tell them, oh, don't buy here. Here's the thing. There is, I don't know those that remember DC 10, 15 years ago, certain areas that you wouldn't even drive by are now luxury areas. So that is kind of the trend that Baltimore is trying to go in. You might be stepping into a gold mine. But there are some areas, especially Pigtown, there are some areas, as soon as you go a little bit up in Baltimore, those areas have never gotten this economic boom that the rest of the area down there has gotten, you know? So you just one block over and it's a nightmare. And then over here, it's really good, you know? It can be the difference in hundreds of thousands. So you may be stepping into a gold mine. You buy a house for 100 grand, and once the whole block gets renovated, that house could be worth 300,000. You know, but you can buy that house for 100,000 and nothing around it gets renovated and moves up, and then your house is just worth less and less because more crime. And so just had to point that out. Hey, go do your due diligence. So a local agent that kind of has an idea of the market is very key when you buy, and this applies to different areas across the country. Just somebody that knows the market. It doesn't necessarily have to be crime. It can be traffic. You know, I got, for instance, veterans that are in the Andrews Air Force area, you know, and they weren't, not even veterans, even active duty. Some are veterans, but they still are contractors there, contract work with the Air Force Base, and they want this home but don't want to commute. And I got to point out, hey, 301 gets heavy traffic. Is that something you're okay with, you know? So just get a local agent that knows the area. All right, well, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do so. That's how you help the channel grow. I really do appreciate it. And if you are a local agent in some other place and you have a buyer looking to move to the Washington, D.C. or Maryland area, we do take referrals. My information will be in the description below. If you are a home buyer or seller in the D.C. or Maryland area looking to sell or purchase your home, by all means, reach out to me.
Your ultimate hub for real estate insights, breaking news, entrepreneurial wisdom, investing strategies, and self-development hacks. If you're ready to expand your mind and stay ahead of the game floor, you're in the right place. Subscribe now. Your future self will thank you.